Okay, welcome to TechKnow. I'm Tony Virelli, and today I'm going to be talking about Locksport. So, what is Locksport? Because a lot of you just think lockpicking, how can something be a sport? It's not very athletic, but we'll get into this. It's about as much of a sport as chess is. And if you ask someone who plays chess competitively, you would say that they take it very seriously, and to them it is their sport. So I'm going to read this verbatim because this is right off the Wikipedia page, not my own personal opinion, but I kind of agree with it. Locksport is the sport of recreation of defeating lock systems. Its enthusiasts learn a variety of skills, including lockpicking, lock bumping, and a variety of other skills traditionally known only to locksmiths and other security professionals. Locksport followers enjoy the challenge and excitement of learning to defeat all forms of locks and often gather together in sport groups to share knowledge, exchange ideas, and participate in a variety of recreational activities and contests. At the core of Locksport is the philosophical belief in responsible full disclosure. Locksport enthusiasts target security through obscurity that is common within the locksmith industry, as well as among lock manufacturers. Those who choose to participate in Locksport often seek to discover security vulnerabilities and notify lock manufacturers, as well as, in some instances, the public, in an effort to promote improvements in the field of physical security and to aid consumers in making better, more informed decisions about their own security. This philosophy is contradictory to the held by many locksmith organizations, and Locksport enthusiasts have come under attack for releasing information about lesser-known vulnerabilities. Nonetheless, Locksport enthusiasts persist in discovery of weakness in all forms of physical security. So, if you're into software or penetration testing or software security, you understand this is very familiar. What people do is they try to penetrate or hack into systems and or software to find the vulnerabilities. They normally do responsive disclosure to the manufacturers or programming firms of that software, hoping that in turn those companies will then secure their software. In theory, Locksport tries to do the same thing with a lot of lock manufacturers. There has been, since I've started doing this, definitely some improvement in new companies coming out with locks that listen to what we have to say. And then there's companies such as Master Lock who never listen. Locksport ethics. So there's a lot of rules to how you lockpick, but there's two main ones, and technically there's a third one, but it falls underneath those two. One, never pick a lock that you don't own. And number two, never pick a lock that is in use. So number one is quite obvious, because if you pick a lock that's not yours, it's illegal. So you might say, well, what if my friend asked me to pick a lock? If you're a grown adult, that's probably not a problem. If you're a kid and someone says, pick my lock, they don't own that lock, their parents do. So you would not be picking a lock that you have permission to own. Even professional locksmiths get disclaimer agreements signed saying that if I break your lock, I'm not held liable, things along those lines. Never pick a lock that's in use, and that's for good reason. One, if you don't know what you're doing, you'll most likely damage the lock and it'll stop working. And number two, just over time of doing it over and over again, you'll wear down the locks. So this is a quote that should have fit, but doesn't apparently. The key doesn't open the lock. It only activates the mechanism which allows the lock to be opened. And that's by Mark Weber Tobias. So raking my way in. So this is kind of the story of how I got into lock picking and Locksport in the first point. It was quite a few years ago, at least 10 years ago, I'd say. I went to a DEF CON conference, which is a hacking conference in Las Vegas. And there was a vendor in the vendors area who had some lock picking tools, and I walked over and I was just kind of looking at him. And I said, I've always been interested, I thought this is kind of cool, how do I lock pick? He's like, well, I'll show you, I'll teach you how to do it in like 3 seconds. So he hands me a Master Lock number 3, which is what that is, and he hands me a triple peak rake, or a Bogota, as another way it's known. And he's like, all I want you to do, and he showed me how to use a tension tool, and I'll get into all that. And he's like, just push this tool in and out of the keyway over and over again, and just barely put your finger on this tool. And I'm like, okay. So I'm sitting here going like this, and like within 3 seconds, the lock opens. And immediately I'm like, that's awesome. So if you're into figuring out problems, puzzles, or problem solving, the first time you pop open a lock, it gets a little addicting because you're like, that was easier than it should have been. Like I expected a padlock to secure something, and obviously it doesn't. So anyways, that's how I got started in Locksport. So how do you get started? Well, you come to this presentation and you listen closely. So tools, let's talk about tools first of all. So what tools should you start with? There are a lot of lockpick tools out there, a ton. And I'm the kind of guy who goes like obsessive compulsive about things. So I went out and got like everything I could find in the world because I wanted them all to figure out how they all worked. But to get started, there are some very basic tools that you can get. And in my opinion, there's 3 lockpicks you should get and 2 types of tension tools, which I'll get into. So the first thing you should get is a hook. This is probably your most common type of tool. Digging, digging, digging. Maybe I brought one. I would hope I did. So this is a hook, which obviously the picture shows exactly the same. And this is literally what it sounds like. It's a piece of metal that comes out with a little hook at the end. This is used for a couple different forms of picking, but most commonly it's used for what's called single pin picking. And this is when you go through a lock and by each pin individually, you lift each pin one by one, trying to set the lock. There's other forms. There's an inappropriate term that is the same word for a female dog, and it's called that picking. And literally you put tension on, you just jam this thing in and out as fast as possible, and it's luck of odds that you hope you set pins. So a hook pick should be your number 1 pick because I did this backwards, which was I learned to rake before I learned a single pin pick. And if you learn a single pin pick, you'll be able to go above and beyond on more security locks down the road. Number 2 is a rake. It's a triple peak or Bogota, which is right here. And it literally is just 3 humps on a piece of metal. And what this is an odds concept. So in most padlocks, cheap padlocks, there's 4 pins. Some have 5, but most have 4. And most of them don't have security pins. So putting tension on and just pushing this in and out, what it does is it randomly throws the pins up. And your hope is that as you're putting tension on the core and turning it, that as the pins get thrown above the shear line, they stick. And if you keep doing it over and over again, the odds are that you will pop open a lock just using a tool like this. And then the third tool that I would say that you need or would be good to have is what's called a city rake or an L rake. And the reason it's called a city rake is because this looks like the horizon or skyline of a city, otherwise known as an L rake. Now this is not an in and out tool, this is a rocking tool. If you look at it, it kind of looks like the profile of a key with teeth. So when you stick it in, you put tension on and just rock it up and down. You can pull it out a little bit and rock it up and down. And the different frequencies of the bumps on this rake will allow the pins to be pushed up at different locations. So it's another one. But what would be arguably the most important tool is tension tools. So these are a lot of different tension tools and a lot of different configurations. There's some that are called like a Z wrench, where you can see it goes one way down and back the other way. Just standard wrenches. Some of them have twists in them. There's a lot of different tension wrenches. All those are windshield wiper insert blades. So if you take a windshield wiper apart, that's the metal that comes out of a windshield wiper, and then they're bent. So these are standard tension tools, and these are usually they're for what's called bottom of the keyway, which is when you insert see if I can get this out. So here's just a standard lock. What would happen is you would take this tool and insert it into the bottom of the keyway, and then you would apply tension to this and then go in on top of that and pick each pin. So this is bottom of the keyway, tension wrench. And there's what's called pry bars. Some pry bars can be used for top of the keyway or bottom of the keyway, but mostly pry bars are used for top of the keyway tension. And I swear I had one in here, but apparently I misplaced it. That's okay. Oh, here it is. So this is a pry bar. And the pry bar is meant to go in the top of the keyway, like this. And the reason you would do this is some keyways are very constrictive or small. And by putting it in the bottom, you're actually losing height to get your pick underneath some of the really deep set pins, which can cause you to overset some. So by doing this, it lets you work from the bottom, giving you way more room to move within that keyway. Okay, so tools. You can buy them and you can make them. If you're just getting into this, I'm just gonna say buy them. Way easier. Now, if you're gonna make a tension wrench and you just so happen to have some old windshield wipers that you just took off your car laying around, great, grab a pair of pliers and bend it and you have a tension tool. If you look, so this is a hook. If I compare the thickness of this hook to a windshield wiper insert, you can see that that entire pick fits in that profile. So you can actually make tools using like a Dremel or a bench grinder to make your own tension or your own actual picks. I mean, if you look at this hump, you're probably not going to get that with a Dremel or a bench grinder, obviously, but you can buy like needle files for like $1 at Baumgart's that would fit in here and just file those right out. So yeah, you can make your own, but I would say if you're getting started to see if you're interested in it, buy them. They're not that expensive. When you buy a single pick, you can expect to pay somewhere between $3 to $8, depending on the quality of the material and the manufacturer of the material. Okay, so what should you start with locks? So locks are a whole nother story. There's a lot of locks you can start with. There's a lot of cheap locks. You probably have some laying around your house. But if you have never picked a lock before, and you actually want to understand how picking a lock works, I would highly recommend that you start with one of these. So these are acrylic padlocks that are completely clear and show all the way through. So it actually shows you the core of the lock, it shows you the pins, it shows you the springs, shows you the actuator and everything. So as you're picking pin by pin, especially if you're doing a single pin pick, you can see each pin lift up when it's past the shear line. There's a couple reasons for this. One, obviously, it lets you know why you're not getting it open. And two, one of the most common things you'll do when picking a lock is either A, overset, which means you take the pin that's down in the keyway and push it past the shear line so it's overset and it will never turn. Or you underset it. So you push it up and you almost have it there, but you kind of have the key pin stuck in the way. The driver pin, which is the top pin, it's not pushed up far enough. And I'm kind of skipping over terms of basic locks like driver pins and key pins because I'd already done a presentation on how locks work. So if you want for that, check out the presentation on our TechKnow website, techknow.io. Anyways, so there's a couple different ones. This one is almost identical to this. The big difference being is this has an actual metal shackle on it, and this one has a plastic shackle. But let's say you don't want to buy your own lock, but you just kind of want to get started. Then I would recommend starting with, I know I have one, a Master Lock number 3. By far one of the easiest locks to pick. And saying that means I'm going to try to rake this open and it won't open because that's Murphy's Law. So I'm going to start with the city rake. And this is just a back and forth motion. Let's see if I can get it here. Told you Murphy's Law was in play. When I say that the tension tool is the most important, there's a reason. You have to learn how to tension the proper tension. If it's too much, it won't go. If it's too light, you're not going to set the pins. And I don't have the right tension tool would be a reason. Sometimes the tension tool can dig underneath the keyway and it'll cause the whole core to bind. Okay, this is a horrible example. I'm glad this is working out so well for me. Let's see if I can get it open with the Bogota. The worst part is that sometimes I can get harder locks open than simpler locks, and I've messed with this one so much that I've possibly damaged to the point that the key wouldn't even work in it anymore. Okay, anyways, match lock number 3, I'd start with that. I'll go on to the next one. I think I actually have slides for this. Okay, sorry. Clear padlock, that's what I would start with. Another one would be the match lock number 3. This is the learnlockpicking.com 6-pin challenge practice lock. There's a reason I jumped to this compared to the one I'm going to show you here in a second. So that's what this is right here. This comes with 6 pins in it, but instead of having learned how to take a lock apart properly, there's actually set screws across the top, and it comes with a hex wrench, so you can undo each one. So you could reduce this down to a single pin lock. And once you learn how to pick 1 pin, you could put 2 pins in. And once you figure that out, put 3 pins in and work your way up. And then it also comes with a few extra pins, and you can buy repinning kits for it, and you could put security pins like serrated and spool pins and change the keyways. And I don't think I have no. Okay, so I didn't talk about this one because it is more of it has a security pin in it. I believe it has a single spool, but this is a Master Lock 140. This is by far one of my favorite ones to pick because I consider this one to actually be easy. So this one I'm 99.9% sure I will get open. Yeah, so I believe the other one's damaged. So that was with a Bogota. I just took a couple seconds to get open. I'll do the same thing here with the L-rake. This one may not work as well as the Bogota did because the security pin doesn't necessarily work with this one. Yeah, I'll just single pin pick this one. So this is with a hook. You go 1 pin at a time. I know for a fact this has 4 pins in it, and I know one's a spool pin. And if you were up here, you'd actually be able to hear the pins clicking. So that's going 1 pin by 1 pin at a time. So you can actually, every once in a while when you hear, you'll hear a little click, click. It's the same sound as well, they'll hear this, but just a little sound of a metal clicking. Okay, so how did I learn all this? I didn't have a mentor. If you want to hang out with me, I'll teach you what I know, but I'm not a mentor. Online resources, there's a ton of stuff online. YouTube, all day, every day. So I'm going to go through some of my favorite YouTubers. In my last talk, I talked about a specific YouTuber who I will not bring up in this one. There's some reasons that he's unethical that I've learned, but he does have good content. But in the Locksport community, he's kind of frowned upon, just because it seems like maybe he's willing to support pick manufacturers or brands if they're willing to pay enough, even though they may not be a good enough product. So number 1 is a guy named Locknoob. This guy is, I believe, out of the UK. And I created bit.ly links for all these guys because obviously YouTube channel URLs are ridiculous. So bit.ly/Locknoob. So the cool thing about Locknoob is that almost every creator or every video I talk about, or any Locksport video you see, most of their content is them picking locks. Makes sense. And there's a concept of creating a challenge lock. So I might create this, and I might load it full of security pins and mess with it in a different way, and then send it off to someone and challenge them to try to pick this lock. Well, Locknoob actually creates security pins, and he does it in a cool way. I have one here. I'll pass it around so you guys can see this. Have to find it first. That's not the one that works. So it doesn't really work right now, so don't try to take the key out because I've jammed it in there, and it's really hard to see. But he created ones that look like chess pieces. One that looks like a pawn, one that looks like a rook. So he goes above and beyond. He's created ones, I think, for a holiday where it looks like a Christmas tree, and one that looks like an ornament and things like that. So he does some cool things, and he also creates lock picks. And he works with a really talented designer or manufacturer guy who can make picks out of the metal. And not only that, a couple major manufacturers have picked up his lockpick. So he created one called the Boom Slang. He named a couple different picks after snakes, and apparently a boom slang is a snake. Didn't realize that. And Sparrows, is a lockpick manufacturer, picked it up and called it the Medusa. And the cool thing about a boom slang is if you use it on one side, It's in the shape of an S rake, so it's got a hump on it. But if you turn it upside down, it's also a short hook. It's a hook. So in one pick, you have 2 picks in one. So it's a really cool concept. So he does a lot of reviews on picks, picking products. He talks about the picks he's made, the lock pins he's made, and then he also talks about different locks and shows them how he picks them open. And then there's a gentleman named the Lock Picking Lawyer. And my understanding is he actually is a lawyer, but enjoys Locksport as well. So the thing that sets him apart is he'll pick locks all day long. But the cool thing about his channel is he actually does destructive tests on locks. Like what happens if I take a pair of bolt cutters to the shackle? What happens if I take a pipe wrench to the maximum security lock that's on a chain and twist it? Or he'll show you that a lot of locks are made out of nickel or some cheap material on the inside, and if you just take a blowtorch to it for a long enough period of time, the inside melts and you can just pop the shackle out. So he does a lot of really cool destructive things on there as well. And then we come to who I'm going to recommend to you that if you're in any way whatsoever interested into Locksport, lockpicking, the Helpful Lockpicker. His name literally describes what he is, helpful. He has made what I consider to be the absolute best tutorials online for lockpicking. I believe I could set my 6-year-old son down in front of his videos, and over time he would learn to pick locks because he explains it slow, in depth, and doesn't try to fit too much information into one video. He breaks them out. And he actually has a home lock picking playlist that's like learn to pick from beginning. So I actually reached out to him and asked him if he could create a little video for tonight. And I'm hoping you can hear the audio on this. I'm doubting it unless I decide to plug this in, which I might be able to do. Audio, audio, audio. Right here. Okay, let's see if I can get this to come out my computer. I'll probably have to adjust this to make this happen, but we'll see what happens here. Okay. So, oh, never mind. Apparently I got to find a way to play this. I know what to do. I know what to do. There's a reason I did this. Okay, here we go.
Hey TechKnow, this is the Helpful Lockpicker here, and today I'm going to show you how to get started in Locksport. So a little bit of background information on myself. I am the Helpful Lockpicker. I've been running my channel for a little bit over a year now. And when I first started, I noticed that there were a lot of great lockpickers in the Locksport community, but one thing that it was missing was a how-to channel on how to get started in Locksport. When you are first learning to pick your first lock, it can be a very challenging task because you really want to be able to visualize and conceptualize what's going on. So what I created was my lockpicking homeschool series that will really help someone that has zero experience with locks be able to grow to an intermediate level. I have gotten a lot of great feedback from the community that all my videos have really helped people understand what's going on and grow as pickers. One lock you'll commonly see featured in my lockpicking homeschool video series is this clear acrylic padlock. This lock is really great because you can really see what's going on inside as I am explaining the concepts, and this is a really great teaching tool and a great lock to learn on. If you guys would like to learn more about my lockpicking homeschool series, check out the link above. I'll link to my playlist so you'll be able to start learning how to pick your first lock. If you guys are interested in learning more, please check out my channel and consider subscribing. It is a really fun channel for me to run, and I really enjoy being able to interact with everyone and answer all their questions. So TechKnow, thank you so much for checking this out. I wish everyone luck on their Locksport journey, and I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you so much.
So anyways, that was the Helpful Lockpicker. That was awesome of him to take the time to do that. And I appreciate that. Delete. Oh, I just deleted my entire presentation. That's awesome. Great. Looks like I'll be starting that over. Yeah, no. That's okay. Not a big deal because I actually have the slides. Just more work for me, you know. Yeah. QuickTime. Done. File. Screen recording. Yes, please. That works for me. Okay. So play from current slide. Let's see if this works again. Perfect. Okay. So anyways, another online resource I use a lot of is Reddit, /r/lockpicking. Tons of people on there that'll help, give you ideas, ways to pick things. Just don't ask how to pick locks that look like they're in use. They won't help you. They actually have a belt ranking system that you can work as a goal to achieve further and further. So you start out as, if you pick any lock whatsoever, you could pick this clear acrylic lock, watching yourself do it, and they'll give you a white belt just for trying, for doing it. I believe once you do like a Master 140, I think they'll give you a yellow belt, and you work on up to purple, all the way up to black. And at a certain point, you've had to have mentored somebody. You've had to have created a challenge lock and sent it to somebody. You've had to create a tool from scratch when you get way up there. But for the lower levels, it's just something to help you. If you want to get into that concept, it helps you set goals to try to move on in Locksport. And for now, a demonstration. So I showed you a couple of locks there, but what I'm going to show you is some things that would not necessarily be considered Locksport. It's more lock picking, and that's because Locksport's kind of more of a skill-based concept of I can go through a lock pick or pin by pin. But I wanted to show you this. So these are American Lock Series 1100 locks. And they're considered to be some of the best locks that you can get. I know there's a lot better locks out there, but to your layman, these would be some of your best locks you can get. They're not that expensive, about $11 a lock. They're all 5-pin, and they all almost every pin is security pin, which means the key pin on the bottom has grooves cut in it up the pin, which are serrations. The pins above in the driver pins that push the springs up also have serrations, and some of them have spools, which means they're thick at top, skinny in the middle, and thick at bottom again. And those spools have serrations on them. So it's about as secure as you can get for this price level of a lock. There's a lot more expensive locks. I need to see which one of these. Okay, that opens that one. So I kind of want to do this demonstration for this exact purpose. This is what laziness causes. So this is the key for this lock. Stick it in. Turn it, opens. Obviously, that's what we expect a key to do. This is a tool by Peterson Lockpicks. This is an American lock bypass tool. Stick it in, turn, open. Just as easy as a key. Here's one made by Sparrows, which is another lockpick manufacturer, exactly the same tool, just different people make it. In, twist, open. So I could give this to anyone, and they'd be able to do that within seconds. Here is the same lock. It's a little less of a shackle, but same model. This will not work on this lock. And there's a reason. I took the time to open this lock up, and I put in a shim inside of it, or a block. And what this is it's a small piece of metal. And I guess I should explain how this works. These bypass through the keyway. If you look at the keyway, at the back of the actual core, there's an opening. It can go all the way through in. And on the back of it, there's a half moon shape. This shoves through that keyway, and normally there's a piece of metal on the back of the keyway that articulates an actuator, which turns, releases ball bearings, and the shackle pops out. This does just that. It reaches all the way through the keyway, turns that little piece of metal so the ball bearings can pop in. So by simply putting something that cost me about a penny behind the keyway, this can't push all the way through the core into the actuator to open it. Two reasons you'll find this. One, in a mass manufacturing situation, it's hard to slip this little piece of metal over the top of this core before you shove it into a lock and screw it in. It's a lot more finicky. The second reason you might find this is if someone's ever taken this lock to someone to have it fixed, repaired, or rekeyed, they might have either lost or forgot to put that disc back in. So the first thing you would ever do, or I would ever do if someone gave me this to pick, is the first thing I would do is try to bypass it. I'm actually not skilled enough yet to pick one of these with a lockpick. You cannot, with security pins like this, you're not going to rake it open. It's just not going to happen. You have to go single pin pick it one by one, or bolt cutters works really well. So that was that demonstration. Another demonstration I want to show you here is there's a lot of tools. There's a couple different manufacturers. Again, two main manufacturers of the tools I own are Peterson lockpicks and then Sparrow lockpicks. Peterson is an American-made company. All their products are made in America. And Sparrow's is a Canadian-based company. I don't know where theirs are made, but maybe Canada, I assume. Anyways, everyone's seen locks like this before. These are combination locks. A little bit different combination locks. You see these on briefcases, luggages, and these padlocks like this. And the way this works is there's a gate inside this. And by that, what I mean is there's a circle. And on the circle, there's a little dip. Okay? And what happens is when all those dips line up properly along the side of the shackle, it clears the way for a little piece of metal to bypass it all and come up. And that's how you open it. So if you ever came upon this, it's super easy. You can actually, you don't need a tool like this. I prefer a tool like this because I like tools. You can use a piece of tin can that you cut off a pop can or something like that, just a little piece of metal. And what you do is you set this in to just like this, and you start twisting the first one. I need to get it to a number because I know what the combination is, but like this. And it's gonna be really hard to see, but if you watch closely, you'll kind of see this drop in, just ever so slight. You'll see it drop in when I hit it. So I'm turning. There, it just dropped in. It's hard to see from where you're at. But if I keep doing this over and over again, pretty soon there, that one just dropped in. And if you're holding this, you would feel it drop in significantly. There, that one dropped in. And that dropped in. So right now, this is set to the number 5536. That is not the combination of this padlock. It will not open. But one thing I know for a fact now is that gate is all lined up. So now to open this, you would turn each number all of them one digit at a time, and try it. And you'll keep doing this over and over again until the lock opens. Since there's only 10 possible numbers, it actually doesn't take that long. I just so happen to know that the next one will work. I know it won't. I overset that one, sorry. There. So, but what this does is this just drops down into the gate. It's a super thin, flimsy piece of metal. Usually you can make these out of feeler gauge, things like that. Or like I said, just a thin piece of pop can if you want to make your own. Otherwise you can buy tools like this. So those are some of the demonstrations. Let me think, I don't think there's anything else. I'll show you some other stuff. There's a ton of tools. I actually have a section called Show and Tell I'll get into here in a second. It's just to show you all the different stuff in case you have questions. Show and Tell. Perfect. So I don't think I brought it with me because I wasn't going to try to do it here. But there's another kind of lock. So most locks have pins that you're pushing up and down. Some have what are called disc detainer locks. And there's these discs that you rotate. You can use other picks to do it, but the common tool you would use is this. This is like 10 bucks on a China website. So literally what you do is you're shoving this down the lock, and this has this little like diamond shape, and you get it between the discs, and you just rotate while this applies tension. So that's a disc detainer lock pick. These are different keys. For example, this is a replication of an automobile lock. Okay, using something like, I believe this one will work. Maybe, if I don't drop it, go back. You could set this inside, apply tension like you're turning a key, and just move it up and down. See if I can get this to work on camera. There, and it opens. So it's just simple as putting it in and jiggling up and down. They're called jigglers. There's something like that. There's wafer locks. There's a ton of different ones. These are actually skeleton keys, or like skeleton keys. These are for what's called warded locks. Let's see if I have one. I do. So this is a warded lock. It's kind of interesting. There's actually no pins in there. What it is there's things you have to push in to open the lock, but there's wards. There's pieces of hard metal between that these have to fit through. It's really a stupid concept because you can see these two little teeth here. All these are doing is fitting through and finding a place inside, and it's a key. I mean, if you looked at a real warded lock, I think I have the keys for these. You might be familiar with this. Yeah. This is what happens when you get into Locksport. You have a key ring like this. This is a key for the warded lock. So you wouldn't technically know which wards are active, but most of them, you could just shave off the bottom one and it's going to work. So that's a warded lock. Okay, another one that I love, and this is a fun one, are tubular locks. So you see these on vending machines, ATMs, lots of locks. This, give me a second here. This is a tubular lockpick. It's actually more than a lockpick, it's actually a decoder. So if I put this like this and just get it just the right tension, and I insert this into the lock, it's as simple as pushing in and just rocking it back and forth over and over again. As long as I have that screw tension right. What's happening is the tension on the pins is pushing these little fingers that are on this lockpick up. Let's see if I can get this. There we go. So it just opened, which doesn't matter. I need to tighten it down. Now if I tighten this down, it's like I'm walking around with a working key. I almost over-tightened it. But anyways, if you tighten this down and lock it down, this will be a working key. Obviously, you're not going to walk around with this. But most of these tubular locks come with what are called decoders. And what happens is you sit here and you take these teeth, they all have numbers on them. And you can line them up and say, okay, well, that's a 5, that's a 4, that's a 1, and that's a 7. And you can actually go to any locksmith who has a code cutter for these and say, yeah, I need a 7-pin tubular lock cut to this. And they'll cut you one. And then you have a lock key, or a key for that lock that you just depicted. So these are kind of expensive. These ones are about $40 to $50 a piece, I think, for a lock pick like this. But recently, I found a website, which I'm not going to promote on this channel, but I'll talk to you guys later. It's not anything crazy. It's a China website. That's why I'm not going to promote it. That produced these. It's a set of 3, and it cost me $25 for all 3. You saw how I had that nice like screw down part for this. This doesn't have this. This uses cheap rubber bands around the outside to attain the lock here. Let's see if I can get it. So this has these rubber bands around it. I think this is also, let's see if I can find that lock again. So see how well this works here. Let's push those all up. Just to show you the difference between an expensive one and a cheap one. I'm not guaranteeing this is going to work, but it probably will. Yeah, I don't know. The problem that I've found with these is that you have to have the right amount of rubber bands on because the rubber bands push the pins down. I did pick one open with this earlier and it did work. So I know they do work. I'm just not having luck with it right now, obviously. Why would I expect the cheap China stuff to work right now? Anyways, the cool thing about these are with enough if you're finicky enough with them and get them set just right with enough rubber bands, they'll work. These come in different sizes. So those 2 I had was for a 7-pin or an 8-pin tubular lock. These are all 7-pinners, but this one is a 7.8 millimeter, I believe, is the measurement they're going by. This one is a 7.5. You can see the color code them. And this one is a 7.0. Now, you might ask, why do I need all these different ones? Well, you all know John Hass. And he asked me to pick open a gun safe for him that he had locked his gun in. And my picks I had didn't work. The lock on it was a tubular lock, but it was super small. And mine would not work in there. Had I had this, though, it would have worked just fine. So, yeah, there's a lot of different sizes that you can do. And again, that's like $25 shipped from China. And then the last thing I think I'm going to, there's two last things I'll talk about tonight. One is called bump keying. So this is a quick set key. You can just tell by the body. And all a bump key is, you put a lock inside and you take a bump hammer and you put it inside just like that to pop it open, is what you're doing really. I don't know if it's going to set with the ones I have because I have some security pins. Normally you put a little, it's actually a castration ring, isn't that a fun word, over this, and what it does is it acts like a little bumper to bounce it back out every time. Fun fact, if you know someone who has a bunch of bump keys and you go to Menards, they have a tool called Minute Key, and what it's made for is for you to put your own key in to create key duplication. Well, if you put a bump key in, for $1.99 it duplicates you a perfect bump key. And for an extra $1, they'll make a second one. So quantity discounts. I actually have a video up on my YouTube page of me doing this. So I thought that was kind of clever. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about, and this is way out there. By the way, this is what a castration ring looks like if you're not aware of it. We're from Iowa, so we all know probably, but this just acts like a little rubber that pushes the key back out, so you don't have to tap it in, pull it out, tap it in, pull it out. This just bounces it right back out. The last thing I'm going to talk about tonight, as far as a tool goes for show and tell, is this. There's a lot of cheap Chinese versions of these. This one's just awesome because it comes in a great case. This is a pick gun. This is not an electronic pick gun. There's electric ones which are crazy, like $250. But this, other than having amazing packaging, is a pick gun. Let's see if I can get this out here. And again, a lot of the stuff isn't Locksport. Locksport is supposed to be skill-based, not luck-based, and a lot of these tools I'm showing you right now are luck-based. So this is the pick that comes with it. It's just a standard piece of straight metal. You unscrew the tension screw on this, and then tighten it down. And this is actually called the double tap because it's one click, two clicks from one pole. And all this is doing is, if you watch it really closely, this is just going up, smack, or smack, smack. And it's trying to throw all the pins up. And it's the luck of numbers again. And I don't know if this will work with security pins. I don't believe it will, but we're going to try it anyways. I'm willing to fail. Probably not going to work with security pins. Let me try with non-security pins. We'll try the master lock that wouldn't open earlier. Why not? Obviously not quite enough to do if you're trying to break into someone's house. Which you should never do. This is Locksport. I can feel a couple of the pin setting. It's not getting it. Usually if it hasn't gone by now, it's not going to. I still think I need to get a new master lock number 3 because this thing must be shot. But then there's also a dial up here that lets you tighten or loosen the amount of spring force that comes out of this. So that's a pick gun. If you have a non-security locked pick or lock, non-security pinned lock, like 4 pins or so, this should pop it right open usually. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about TechKnow and the fact that we are now having our very own lock lab. So at the back of the room, you'll see a little blue container there, and it's full of lock picks. And that is so if you are a TechKnow member, you'll have full access to come in here and try to learn lock picking and Locksport without having to buy your own locks. Right now, we don't have any locks back there, but we will be having some locks that we'll set back there for you to learn how to pick with. We actually have the windshield wiper insert blades and a special bend it tool to make your own tension wrenches, so you can learn how to do that. And on that note, I need to give a very special thanks to Peterson Locksmith Tools. So Peterson is the company I talked about who has all their tools made in America. I reached out to Ken, the owner of Peterson Locksmith Tools, and he was nice enough to give us a discount. So he supplied us with more tools than we were able to afford if we would have bought them by ourselves. He liked what we had to say about what our organization was. So if you're looking to buy your first picks, it'd be hard for me to say not to go to thinkpeterson.com to buy your first picks, just because they supported us, so it'd be great if you could support them. Personally, the #1 picks I use when I do lock pick, and this isn't just me saying that, I'll show you why, are Peterson lock picks, and you're like, oh, that's only like 5 or 6 picks. That's the first bag. That's the other bag. So I use Peterson for almost all my picks. Whenever I'm picking, the first pick I'll go to is this. So learn lock picking class. TechKnow offers classes. So we're going to offer a lock picking class that I'm going to teach. It's going to be $30. And the cool thing about this is when you sign up, you get the class, but you also get this kit. Okay? And in this kit, you will learn not only how to pick a lock, but how a lock works and why it's pickable. Because what you're going to do is you're going to work with me, and we will build your own clear body lock pick, or excuse me, lock padlock. So you'll have the body. In here we have the actual core. Let's see if I can get all this out without dropping everything. The shackle. And then the cool part is you're going to have to go through and put each independently. Let's see if I can get this out of here. All the pins and springs in, so you understand how they work. And then in this kit, you'll also get the tension wrench and your very first, well, maybe your very first, unless you do this already, lock pick, which is a hook pick. So in this class, we're going to learn how locks work by building one, and then I'm going to show you how to single pin pick the clear padlock open. It'll be a really easy class. The lock's not hard to do if you have trouble putting it together. I've put one together before. The one I showed you actually came from a kit just like this. And the cool part is it actually comes with the keys too. So you'll understand how the keys affect everything. So that'll be a class we're having coming up. I don't have a date on it yet, but it will be $30. And you get to go home with this kit when you're done. So you'll have a lock pick, a tension wrench, and a practice lock to use. But I will put a post on our website at techknow.io. If you go to our classes page, you will see when that is coming up. And that is that. So anyone have any questions? Otherwise, I am done.
What about like a combo lock?
Sure. So like this?
Like that.
Perfect. So there's a couple different things you can do with combination locks like this. One is a bolt cutter. That's nothing else you're looking for. 2, and I don't have any with me. I left them in my office. There's things called shims, and they're little pieces of metal with tabs on them with like a down arrow, and they slide down in the sides, and it pushes the actuators out, and you just pop it open. Okay. There is actually the ability that if you can see if I don't pull up, it spins fine. But if I lift up on it, it locks. There was actually a guy named Sammy Kumar, I believe. I may not be saying his last name right. Anyways, he actually has a system that you can narrow this down extremely to the possible combinations. There's actually a website calculator out there that you can go out and it'll tell you how to find the last number. And then based off the last number, how to reverse engineer like the first or second number, and then it narrows it down to like 100 possible combinations, I think, left over that you have to just run through real quick to see if they work. The Sammy guy is the same guy who wrote the worm, if you remember back on Facebook. That if you liked him, if you friended him, they would put a worm on your MySpace page, and then anyone who visits your page would automatically be friended with him, and it was a worm that spread. So like in one day, all these people started friending him, and they had no clue how. He actually got like suspended from the internet and computers in legal reasons because of that. But he wrote a program with, I believe, a Raspberry Pi or Arduino, 3D printed, that you could just stick a padlock into, and it'll just quickly run through all the possible combinations for you and figure it out. You don't have to do anything, you just stick it in and hit go. You have to build it, but it's kind of a cool little project that he did. So that's how you would do a combination lock. Other questions? No? Okay, one more shout out to Peterson Lockpicks. ThinkPeterson.com. Seriously, if you're going to buy picks from them, they're a place to check. There are a lot of other brands. I'm not telling you where to go. I just highly recommend them. And I do use them. I'm not just saying that because they gave us. There's a reason I reached out to them. It's because I use their product. And then a huge shout out to Helpful Lockpicker for creating that video. I honestly believe, I still to this day, I watch all his videos. I honestly believe that his videos will teach you how to pick locks in a very, very short period of time. So that is all I have. Thanks.